Welcome to the Creepy Cantina, where the spirits are high and the stories are haunting. Grab a drink, pull up a chair, and join us as we explore the darkest mysteries, eerie legends, and chilling true crimes. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows. This is the Creepy Cantina.
Cuando te vi, juré que nunca más voy a olvidar.
So today's episode is going to be about the Black Dahlia, or Elizabeth Short. Um, the Black Dahlia is a case that shocked the world, and there are a lot of details about this case that I think that people may know, but they may kind of overlook. So we're going to talk about those. But other than that, before we get into that, how was your day?
It was good. It was a nice, relaxing Sunday.
Yeah, what'd you do today? Like I wasn't with you.
Yeah, we don't do everything together. Dropped off the kiddos and then had a brekkie at Jack in the Box.
Very luxurious.
Little treat.
Cool, cool. Well, my day's been relaxing but busy. I did a webinar today for the other group that I'm in, for the trading group that I'm in, on school, and then of course went to take the kids back to their respective other parent, dorm, etc. So it was pretty cool, pretty relaxing day, and now I'm sitting here with my best friend, and we get to record an episode and talk about true crime. True crime.
True crime.
Yeah, not. I don't know what true crime is.
We'll find out, I think.
Yeah, I'll have to Google it.
Yeah.
So before we go into the episode, though, I do want to. I want to tell you something.
What?
This is hilarious to me, anyways. So we're always talking about, uh, you know, the demonic possessions, ghosts, paranormal, that sort of thing. Well, I actually came across a story that involves trading and demonic possession. Um, so I have been waiting to tell you this because I think it's great. So for any of our listeners out there who don't know how proprietary firms or prop firms work with trading, what happens is, there's prop firms with forex, with futures. There may be some with stocks, but forex and futures are the biggest one. And in order to pass a prop firm challenge to actually use their capital to make real money, you typically have to pass two phases, right? So the first phase may be 10% that you have to generate on the account. The second phase may be 5%. And then after you pass those two phases, then you'll get, your funded account where you actually trade and make real money. Now, the other side to that is that in order for you also have to be careful with your risk management because they'll have what's called a max daily drawdown and a max overall drawdown. Max daily drawdown is usually somewhere between 3 to 5% of an account. So you can't lose more than 3 to 5% of an account in any single 24-hour period. And then the overall drawdown is usually somewhere between 8 and 10%. So overall, you can't lose more than 10% on the account for the life of the account. So there was a story, and to protect him, I'm going to change this guy's name to Daryl. But somebody put this in one of the Discord groups that I'm in. It's a screenshot of a guy who reached out to support to ask them to give him his account back because he feels like he didn't breach the account. So he breached the account. But this is his story. So he says, I don't know how to say this or if you guys would even believe my story. My house is near a graveyard, so a lot of times paranormal things happen. Sometimes me or someone from my family member get possessed by spirits. I don't know what happened yesterday, but later I received email from MFF, which is my funded futures, that my account has breached daily loss. But it wasn't me, as I was not in control. But I was possessed by spirit while trading. Technically, it was not me who breached the rule, but the evil spirit which possessed me. I hope your support team will understand my issue and give me one more chance by resetting my account for free. And I promise you that I will call an exorcist next time to cleanse my house from any kind of evil or demonic spirits so this issue will not happen again. Thanks. I trust MFF team will look into my matter seriously.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's his story.
That's
huh?
his story.
I was possessed.
He was possessed. The devil made him do it.
Yup. He's like,
I don't know what happened, but
I woke up.
and I had an email that my account was breached. I don't remember anything.
So stupid.
So I think I'm gonna post this screenshot that I have in school, like in the podcast area, because like the fact that he's serious, like he was serious enough to write this and post it. Like he thought about it, he wrote it, and he posted it.
You know, he reread it and was like,
Yeah, this is good. They'll totally
He's
believe
like,
this.
This is my story.
And then I don't know what else to do. I'll call an exorcist. But please give me my account back.
Also, imagine occasionally being possessed by spirits and you're like just random people in your family.
Yeah,
That's
you're
okay.
like, damn it, not again.
Grandma, is that really you? She's crawling up and down.
Like, I don't think that's Granny. Yeah, so that was fun. That was fun to read, and the fact that he's serious is both the best and the worst part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I believe that people can be demonically possessed, but I don't think spirits are possessing people to breach their accounts when they're trading.
Yeah,
Like
just clicking around.
yeah, like watch this. So, yeah, I think that was crazy, but made for a good laugh for like
So
3 days.
stupid.
All right, so let's get into our case about the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short. What do you know, before I even get started here, what do you know about the Black Dahlia?
Not a lot. I think I briefly read like a summary of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this was years and years ago, so I really don't know much.
Okay, cool. Well, just like I said last time, I have a lot to go through. And just like last time, I think that this is going to take multiple episodes. But I don't know if it really will.
Last
So,
time it was only not even an hour.
yeah. And I was like, oh, we're good. But this time I have like 8 pages of notes. So
So maybe.
maybe. Also, I don't know if anyone can tell, but we have headsets now.
Very cool.
Yeah, so our first episode we just did just on a whim because we were so excited to like start recording and do things. But you know me, I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to things like this. So got us some headphones, so hopefully the audio is going to be a lot clearer. Not that it wasn't clear last time, but there's just little things about it that I didn't like. But hopefully having these headsets, having these microphones will make things a lot clearer for us as well. So
No more raw dogging at home.
yeah, we're not going to raw dog it anymore. We've got protection now. All right, so let's get into this case of the Black Dahlia. And as always, stop me whenever you need to comment, ask a question, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Okay, so the Black Dahlia case is one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history, captivating public attention for decades with its shocking brutality, mysterious circumstances, and the chilling moniker given to the victim. Where most see this case, though, as a Hollywood scandal, I prefer to focus on the young woman who was searching for love and stardom and looking to fill a void that may have been created by an absent father. So the name Black Dahlia refers to Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress who was found brutally murdered in Los Angeles, California, on January 15th, 1947. What?
That's someone's birthday that I know.
Oh. Well,
Dun dun dun.
happy birthday. So Elizabeth, originally from Boston, Massachusetts, had moved to California with dreams of making it big in Hollywood. And I use the term moved very lightly because she was very transient, and we'll go through that. Um, you'll see what I mean when we get through the story.
Mm-hmm.
But she moved to California, but like she didn't stay in one place very long,
Oh.
from what it seems. She had a striking appearance, often wearing dark clothing and sporting a black flower in her hair, which, combined with her striking beauty, may have contributed to the media dubbing her the Black Dahlia. Other accounts indicate that it was actually her friends that may have given her the nickname before her death. So Elizabeth's early life. So Elizabeth Short, or Beth, or Betty, as she preferred to be called, was born on July 29th, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of five daughters. Her father, Cleo, had abandoned his wife and his daughters, Elizabeth, Virginia, Dorothea, Elnora, and Muriel, when she was 5 or 6 years old. So her father held various sales jobs over the years, but decided to go into business for himself and opened a mini golf course. He opened it right around like 1929, 1930, somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But this was also right around the time the stock market crashed in 1929. So lots of people lost a lot of money, and frivolous things like going to a mini golf course were not at the top of their list. So his business ultimately failed, and rather than face his family in the midst of this loss and do his duty by his family, he decided to leave.
That's easier.
He's like, "Well, I'm out."
He's like, I suck at this
It's
responsibility thing. I'm gonna go.
yeah, it's been real, but I think this is my stop. So what he did was he parked his car on the Charleston Bridge, staging a suicide, which was very prevalent in that time because lots of people were losing lots of money. So he faked his own death, leaving his car on that bridge, making it look like he jumped off. Right?
What a coward.
Yeah. So you can only imagine like being a 5 or 6 year old little girl, and then you lose your dad. Right? There's studies that show what kind of things that can happen to someone, not just girls, but kids in general, when there's not a father figure present in their life. They could struggle with feelings of abandonment or rejection or anxiety, or become like really clingy or really distant in romantic relationships because they either want to hold on so tight to something that they love because they're scared they're going to lose it, or they're like just distant because they're not used to having a close relationship with with anyone. So other things that it could bring up are they could be risk takers, promiscuous, that sort of thing. So there's a lot to be said about having not only both parents in the home, but especially having a strong father figure in the home as well. Because I mean, mothers are great, and I think mothers have the hardest job in the world. But a mother can only do so much when it comes to trying to provide that fatherly like love and that fatherly like guidance that men can provide in those circumstances.
Right.
So you had both parents growing up. What was that like?
It was perfect. My dad worked 2 jobs most of my life, and my mom would work full time. But when my dad was off from work, he would take over like all the household chores, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, so that my mom could get like a little break.
Yeah.
And we would do a ton of things as a family. Like we'd all go riding bikes, and we're a huge family. There was 7 of us.
Yeah.
So we'd all go riding bikes and doing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we did everything as a family, and I think that I was very lucky to have that, to grow up with both parents and to still have them now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I grew up with my mom in the picture, and then there were, a couple of step parents that I had along the way, and I know that they did what they thought was their best at the time, right? But what I learned from them, both my mom and my stepdad, was that you have to like love your kids, not just in words, but in actions as well, right? And so I have kids that are biologically mine, but then we also have kids that we share together. Not that we share biologically together, but we're both step parents in this situation that
Right.
we're in, right?
We don't have any kids together.
Right. But it's so important to me because, like, our girls, before I was in the picture, didn't have besides their grandfather, didn't have a strong male fatherly figure to look up to, right? So it's super duper important for me to be able to provide that to my kids, all of them, so that they understand not only what it looks like to have a father in the home, but how that father should be treating, their mother. And I think that the worst thing that I could possibly do is to drive my car to a bridge and make it look like I jumped off.
Daddy's gone.
Sorry.
He said, I'm doing my best, honey.
I'm only 34 years old, or however old he was.
Yeah, I think that's bad parenting.
Yeah, for sure. Like
Would not recommend.
that's probably not what a therapist would recommend.
Don't pretend you're dead.
Don't pretend suicide, okay? All right. So, moving on. So when she was 15, she underwent lung surgery. She suffered from chronic bronchitis and crippling asthma attacks, and living in Boston during the winter certainly did not help.
Yeah.
So at the recommendation of a doctor, her mother began sending her to Miami to spend the winters there and keep her away from those brutal Boston winters. And when she was in Miami, she would work as a waitress. So she's got a couple of different connections to Florida that we're going to visit as well. So her education became less of a priority, and she eventually dropped out of school in her sophomore year. Years later, when Elizabeth would have been around 18 years old, Cleo, her dad, sent Phoebe, her mother, an apology letter. Yeah. And confessed that he had not actually died. Surprise! And had moved to California to start a new life.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Imagine getting this letter.
You think it's a joke. Like,
yeah,
who?
I would think someone's playing a fucking prank on me, and it's not goddamn funny.
Right.
That's my husband, and he died.
Nope.
It's
You
your baby.
think he died.
I'm home.
You're like, honey, it's time for me to come home.
So you know what? I missed you.
Thank you for being such a strong single mother. I knew you could do it.
No.
So, yeah. So also, it must have been really easy to just pick up and go in the 30s and 40s. Like,
Yeah.
without the technology that we have today. Like, there's no social media. There was no cell phones. There was no, like, tracking people's bank account activity, as far as I know, right? Like, if you wanted to leave, you could just fucking leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just go to Social Security office and you're like, hey, I lost my social. And you could probably just assume a new identity pretty easily. I imagine it wasn't that hard.
Yeah. Like, there's not as many protocols and, like, things like that back in that time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So try that now, right? So at the age of 18, or right around 18, it was either like the end of 1942 or the beginning of 1943 from what I found. Elizabeth decided to leave her home in Medford, Massachusetts, to live with her father in Vallejo, California. She hoped for a new start and better opportunities in California, particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area where her father was living and working in a shipyard. What she was met with when she got to California was a drunk. They fought a lot, and Elizabeth eventually moved out of her father's home. So their relationship was strained at best. And depending on who you ask, her dad may have been the one that asked her to leave the home. Now, I can only imagine, what may have been going on in the home, what she was doing, what he was doing. But their relationship was so bad, in fact, that it was said that when she died, he didn't even go identify the body. He
Duh.
refused to identify the body. So
Because he was upset with her, or because he was like so heartbroken, do you think?
I think it was because he was upset with her because he also did not go to her funeral.
What a sausage.
Yeah. So they had to use fingerprints and like old employment data from where she worked at out in California to identify her, and then it was up to her mom all the way in Massachusetts to try to organize this funeral in California.
Aw, pobrecita.
Yeah. So while living in California, she worked at Camp Cook, which is now known as Vandenberg Air Force Base, I think. She worked there as a civilian clerk. So she started in January, but by September, she was no longer there because she was arrested for underage drinking in Santa Barbara.
What the heckin'?
Yeah, she was a bad gal. Actually, she wasn't. Besides these instances, I read somewhere that it said that she actually wasn't a big drinker. She didn't even curse. But I don't know how true that is because of the people and the places that she was hanging out with and around. So
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
when people pass away, we tend to forget all of the bad things they ever did, and we are like, no, they were perfect.
They were an angel.
They never did anything. They wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah. So she was arrested for underage drinking in Santa Barbara and was subsequently fingerprinted and then sent back to Medford. She eventually made her way back to Florida, where she met two servicemen, and she was very obviously looking for some sort of love and stability in her life. So the two servicemen she met in Florida, one, his name was, it was 1944 when she was in Florida. So the first person she met, or one of the two that she met, because I don't really know which one she met first, but one of the two men that she met was Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., who was an Army Air Forces pilot. He was there recovering from injuries that he sustained in India during World War II and was on leave in Florida when they met. Some accounts say that he was on leave due to injuries. Others say that he was training for another deployment. May have been both. Who knows? In either case, she was apparently smitten by him. They corresponded by mail when he was deployed, and their relationship quickly became serious. Elizabeth reportedly considered him the love of her life. According to some accounts, Gordon proposed to Elizabeth via letter, and they planned to marry after the war. However, before they could reunite, Gordon tragically died in a plane crash on August 10th, 1945, just days before the war ended. Yeah. His death deeply affected Elizabeth, and it is believed she was devastated by the loss. She talked about him often, throughout her lifetime. So this loss here could have felt very similar to the experience she had when she thought that her father died.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just another traumatic experience where there's this man that she is looking to for love and support, and that she respects, who's suddenly gone once again, right? So I can only imagine what kind of feelings that must have drummed up for her, and just the heartbreak that she may have felt in that situation.
I know, poor girl.
Yeah.
Nothing but heartbreaks for her.
Yeah, sad life she had here. So there was another man that she met in Florida, says right around 1944 as well. And his name was Lieutenant Gordon Fickling, an Army Air Forces pilot as well. So while Elizabeth was living in Miami, she met Gordon through mutual friends. They quickly developed a romantic relationship. Fickling was drawn to Elizabeth's beauty and charm, and Elizabeth seemed to be equally enamored with him. Their relationship blossomed over several months, but it was interrupted when Fickling was deployed overseas in 1945.
Not again.
Yep, here we go again.
Yeah, from the top.
They continued to correspond by mail during his deployment, and Elizabeth reportedly expressed hopes of reuniting with him. After the war ended in 1945, Fickling returned to the U.S. Elizabeth reached out to him, and they briefly connected in California, where Fickling was stationed in Long Beach. However, their relationship did not last, and Fickling eventually ended it. Another rejection,
Mm-hmm.
another abandonment. This brief yet intense relationship was one of several Elizabeth had with servicemen during and after the war, as she frequently moved in search of work and a stable life.
I think she's got a type.
You think so?
I do. I'm starting to get that feeling. I don't know.
Servicemen, pilots in
She
particular.
sees a uniform,
She's
can't resist.
she's like, woof, get a wet floor sign.
Bring them up.
So obviously, it looks like there was some overlap in the timeline of Elizabeth's relationships with both of these men and whoever else she may have, been talking to at the time. But there is no clear evidence that she was romantically involved with both at the exact same time. There's no evidence that she wasn't either. Who knows? The relationships were primarily conducted through letters, and her connections with each man reflected the uncertainties and emotional complexities of the wartime period. Everybody's looking for comfort.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for someone to talk to. So I get that.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth continued to move around frequently in search of work, adventure, and opportunities, particularly in Los Angeles, where she aspired to become an actress. Her transient lifestyle and frequent relocations were partly influenced by her lack of stable employment, as she was never gainfully employed again after 1945, and her attempts to find acting work and her personal relationships. So she had a lot going on. She was looking for love. She was, trying to get an acting career off the ground. She's a young girl, so, 20 something years old, early 20s. I still consider them kids, even though they're not.
Me too. I mean, we have a 21-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
To me, still a kid.
Still your
Like,
kid, yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Relax. Sit down.
Let me help you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you think about it, too. So that's how we think about our own kid, right? But think about this young girl who's out here away from her parents. Her mom's in Massachusetts. Her dad's drunk in California. Doesn't want anything to do with her. Who else does she turn to? Who else does she look for?
Yeah.
So I could imagine that she may have felt very alone.
Not to mention times back then were different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my dad was born in 1959.
Okay.
He started working when he was 6 years old.
Cheetos.
And my mom started working probably before that.
Mm-hmm.
She was even younger. My dad went to school but dropped out in the 6th grade because
What was
he
the
had
point?
to support his family.
Yeah.
He had to take care of them. And so little kids back then were were looked at as little adults.
Yeah.
They weren't children the way we see them now.
They were employees.
Yes, they were a way to get another paycheck.
Yeah.
As sad as that is, that's how it was back then.
Yeah.
So I imagine it wasn't much different, 15 years before then. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You need more wine?
yeah,
Okay.
you can pause your little show.
All right. Give me 1 second. All right. So I figured now is as good as time as any to kind of go over what has happened, why we switched our name from the Horror Cafe to the Creepy Cantina. So what happened was we created this community first on school.com. And then after that, we decided that we wanted to create a podcast as well with the same name. So we created everything, got everything ready to launch, and then discovered that there was already a community, or not a community, but a podcast with the same name of the Horror Cafe podcast on Spotify. So rather than continue moving forward with that name and cause a bunch of confusion amongst different audiences, we decided to go ahead and rebrand since we're early enough in our development and our growth that it's not a big deal. And we changed our name to the Creepy Cantina. So at the end of this episode, it will seemingly cut off because at the end of this episode, I was talking about how people can reach us, which was at Horror Cafe on school, but that is no longer the case. So rather than record the whole episode over, I'll just insert this little piece saying that you can find us at school.com. That's SKOOL.com. /the Creepy Cantina. Um, on that platform is where our community will be housed. That's where all of the bonus content from all of our different podcasts will be. That's where all of the live events that we plan on hosting in the future will be held. And you can engage with other paranormal enthusiasts, true crime aficionados, whatever tickles your fancy. So again, we have rebranded to the Creepy Cantina. We actually re-recorded the first episode of our podcast over, and so we were able to at that point um, just use the new branding because we had already uh, changed the name and everything by the time we recorded that. But this episode was recorded um, before the branding. And again, we just wanted to go ahead and I felt it would be easier to just cut off the end of this podcast and just add this little commercial in there. So just wanted to be transparent and honest with you guys. Hope that you guys can understand what happened. And moving forward, this is how we'll be known, the Creepy Cantina. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get back into the episode. All right, we are back. My wife has more wine. I think we're good to go. Um, I think next time we'll just bring the bottle in here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's probably the best thing to do.
All right.
Everyone's just gonna hear glug glug glug.
Like, oh, she's at it again.
She's drinking.
All right. So we were talking about Elizabeth and what it may have been like for her growing up in that time period, being a young woman in that time period, right? So let's move on. So the reality of Elizabeth Short's Hollywood career. Um, I think there was a lot of exaggeration when it comes to what she actually accomplished in Hollywood. And so many words, she actually didn't accomplish much. Um, so the post-World War II era was a time when many young women moved to Hollywood, dreaming of becoming the next big star. However, the industry was highly competitive and very few achieved their dreams of stardom. Elizabeth Short was one of many who hoped to break into the industry but found it difficult to navigate its challenges, especially without formal connections or experience. Elizabeth Short did not have an established or formal acting career in Hollywood. Though she aspired to be an actress, her connection to Hollywood was more about her dreams and the lifestyle she led rather than a tangible career in the film industry. She was known to tell people that she was an actress or that she was involved in the movie business, but this was more likely a reflection of her aspirations than reality. Despite her ambitions, there are no records of her participating in auditions, taking acting classes, or signing with a talent agency.
Liz,
Yeah. It's
how are you
like
gonna get famous?
it's like Big Bang Theory, Penny, where
Uh-huh.
she's an actress, but she's not in anything.
No.
Right?
She wants to be.
There's a difference
Yeah.
between being something and wanting to
Mhm.
be something.
They're like manifesting it.
Yeah, like
No,
just
I am.
she looks in the mirror. You got this.
You are an actress.
And so I couldn't believe that at first because you see so much about the Hollywood scandal, the Black Dahlia, yada yada yada, right? And I was like, man, she must have had an amazing career for this to be such a big deal. And like every source I looked at said, no, she was not in any movies. She didn't even have like an extra role in anything.
Like nothing.
Nothing. So,
Woof.
yeah, so she had a dream, but that was all it was.
It was all the dreams, she said.
I used to read Pin Up magazine. So, Elizabeth was known to date various men, some of whom were aspiring actors, filmmakers, or servicemen with connections to Hollywood. However, none of these relationships appear to have resulted in significant professional opportunities for her in the entertainment industry. Her romantic life in Hollywood seemed more focused on her social circles rather than advancing an acting career. Unlike other Hollywood hopefuls of the time, there are no documented screen tests, credited roles, or other verified records of her involvement in any film projects. Despite her desire to break into Hollywood, Elizabeth remained largely on the fringes of the industry. Like many aspiring actresses, Elizabeth was vulnerable to exploitation. Think Harvey Weinstein, probably.
Yeah.
There are, well, I mean, not him, but that sort of
People like him,
behavior, yeah. Because obviously he wasn't there in the 1940s
Wasn't he though?
in spirit. The idea of Harvey Weinstein is eternal. um, there are accounts suggesting she may have met people who promised to help her career but never delivered, or who took advantage of her hopes for stardom. However, much of this remains as nothing more than speculation. After her death, Elizabeth's short story became sensationalized by the media, and many myths about her life and ambitions were perpetuated. Some reports exaggerated her connections to Hollywood or suggested that she had been involved with powerful men in the film industry. However, there's little concrete evidence to support these claims. So, yeah, not much that she had going on in the wood.
No, it seems like she knew a lot of people.
And she probably got deep into these circles because of how attractive she was. And I could imagine she was probably a fun person to be around.
Yeah.
But none of it ever amounted to anything, it
No.
seems like.
And maybe that's what she was waiting for, was like for one of these men that she knew to like help her. But all they wanted was to take advantage of her.
Right.
Of course, because she's a little girl. She's 22.
Yeah.
Probably younger at that time, so I'm not surprised.
And there are stories out there where she would tell people, "I'm just waiting on my big break," right? And it just never came. But also, she wasn't taking any action herself. Like I said, she was taking no acting classes. She
No
wasn't doing
auditions.
nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, was she just expecting just to be put in a movie?
Yeah, that could be it too. That she's like, well, I'm beautiful, and someone's gonna give me a role for the way I look. Not quite.
Not how. There's a lot of beautiful girls in Hollywood.
Well, she's famous now.
Yeah, probably not what she was looking for, but
Here we are talking about her.
yeah, that's true. So let's talk about how she was found. So Elizabeth's body was found in a vacant lot on the west side of South Norton Avenue between West 39th Street and West Coliseum Street in a then undeveloped residential area of Leimert Park. The lot was near an intersection close to what is now Crenshaw Boulevard, which at this point in time is not a very savory part of town. So I don't know what it was like in the 40s, but Crenshaw Boulevard's not where I'd spend a lot of time myself personally.
No, I'd probably just drive through.
Just passing through.
Just going through. I'm sorry.
So at around 10 o'clock on January 15th, a local woman, Betty Bersinger, was walking her 3-year-old daughter when she spotted what she initially thought was a discarded mannequin or a store display. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was a human body, and she immediately rushed to a nearby house to call the police because, again, no cell phones.
Right. You have to have a landline.
Right.
And that's assuming the person whose home she ran to had a landline.
Right. So in this case, they did.
Good.
And
that was lucky, but
yeah. And so she called the police. Elizabeth Short's body was found severed in half at the waist. A gruesome detail that shocked the city and quickly drew the attention of the press. The two halves were together, though, but they were like apart. So 2 halves of the body were placed in such a way that they were positioned about a foot apart. So what I mean was they were like
in the
same area, but they weren't together because she had been cut clean in half.
Because she wasn't together anymore.
Right. Right. She couldn't keep it together. It was a terrible, terrible joke. But I couldn't help myself. So the other thing, too, Um, well, I'll go into that in a second. So her body was posed in a disturbing manner, with her arms raised above her head and her legs spread apart. There
Like
were,
a shock
yeah,
for whoever found her.
exactly. Like she was not. They did not place her there for it to be a secret.
Yeah. Was she wearing clothes?
She was naked.
Nude?
She was she was naked.
Yeah, that was pretty disgusting.
Yeah. So there were deep, precise cuts on her face, including slashes from the corners of her mouth up to her ears, creating that Joker smile effect. Um, her body had been drained of blood, making her skin very pale, and it appeared that she had been washed clean. There were also signs of bruising and trauma on her body, suggesting she had been beaten. One thing that's not in my notes here, but I did see in the crime scene photos that will be posted in school, is that there were scratches or like lacerations to her vaginal area. So it seems like somebody took their time with her, and it seemed like this was personal.
And like they had some sort of knowledge about the human body
Right.
because their cuts were precise. They weren't sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was gonna kill someone, it might be a little wonky,
Right.
Like I'm not confident when I'm slicing through someone, but they were.
Right. And in order to cut them clean in half, they had the ability to cut them clean in half. They were able to drain and wash the body and then bring it to another place, right? So it's like it was somebody who had some sort of medical knowledge, and it was somebody who uh, seems like they had some sort of personal vendetta against her. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
Um, so the LAPD quickly responded to the scene and cornered off the area. Detectives, including Detective Harry Hansen and Finis Brown, were assigned to the case. They immediately began a thorough examination of the crime scene, but there were no visible signs of struggle or evidence that would directly link the scene to the place where the murder had occurred. Investigators believe that Elizabeth had been killed elsewhere, just like we said, and her body was dumped in the vacant lot sometime during the night or early morning. The gruesome details of the discovery were quickly leaked to the press, and the case gained national attention almost overnight. So, yeah, I don't think having the press get a hold of this case, even though it was inevitable, was the best thing to happen to this case.
Right.
But, the first thing that comes to mind is who was the last person to see her alive. That would be the first person I want to talk to. And the answer to that question is a man by the name of Robert Red Manley. His nickname was Red because of the color of his hair. So straight to the point there.
Right.
So Robert Red Manley was one of the last known people to see Elizabeth Short alive, and his relationship with her has been a subject of interest in the investigation into her murder. Elizabeth Short met Red in San Diego, California. Manley, a 25-year-old traveling salesman who was married, but had a reputation as a womanizer.
Ay, no, señor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He was immediately attracted to Elizabeth, who was known for her striking appearance and charm. According to Manley, he offered Elizabeth a ride when he saw her near the Aztec Hotel in San Diego, and they quickly struck up a friendship. At the time, Elizabeth was staying with her friends Dorothy and Elvira French. Manley and Elizabeth spent some time together over the following weeks, with Manley often visiting her in San Diego. Elizabeth was reportedly interested in Manley, but there's no evidence that the relationship was deeply romantic. Manley later claimed that they did not have a sexual relationship and that Elizabeth had told him she was looking for a job in Los Angeles. On January 8th, 1947, Manley agreed to drive Elizabeth from San Diego to Los Angeles so she could stay at the Biltmore Hotel and meet her sister, who was coming to visit. They arrived in Los Angeles on January 9th and checked into the Biltmore. Manley claimed that Elizabeth told him she was meeting her sister at the hotel, but there is no evidence that her sister ever came to Los Angeles or that Elizabeth made contact with her family around that time. On January 8th, 1947, the day before they arrived and the day before she was last seen alive, Red Manley picked her up in San Diego and drove her to Los Angeles. But on the way to Los Angeles, they stopped and spent the night at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles.
Of course, it was the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now it's like on, what do you call that? I guess there's like a bunch of addicts that like just live there.
Oh, I see. So it's not a great place.
No, that's where that Ramirez guy, what's his name? He killed a bunch of people.
I don't know this Ramirez person.
Well, a lot of serial killers have stayed there.
Okay.
A lot.
Gotcha.
Because it was so cheap.
Got it.
And just an unsavory place to stay in.
Okay, I see. Well, that's where they stayed.
She was cursed. She stayed there.
Yeah. So according to Manley, the two checked into the Cecil Hotel under false names. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Manley claimed that they stayed in separate rooms and that nothing romantic or intimate occurred between them. But then he later stated in police interviews that he slept in his car that night while Elizabeth stayed in the hotel room. Weird.
I thought we got 2 rooms.
Yeah, because if you got 2 rooms, of course you wouldn't be in the same room. But if you got 1 room, of course you'd be in the same room. But if you stayed in the hotel, if she stayed in the hotel and you stayed in your car,
you wouldn't have gone to the second room.
Right.
And why would you even mention a second room if there wasn't one?
Odd.
Feels like a lie.
That's weird.
That's weird.
So, after arriving in Los Angeles, Manley and Elizabeth spent the day together. Manley left her at the Biltmore Hotel at around 6:30 p.m. on January 9th, 1947. Witnesses, including hotel staff, later reported seeing Elizabeth using the lobby telephone and waiting in the lobby. This was the last confirmed sighting of Elizabeth before her body was discovered 6 days later on January 15th, 1947.
Wait.
Yes.
His name was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Oh, I watched a documentary on him.
Yeah.
He was a fucking creep.
He was a creep. And then there was women writing to him in prison.
Uh-huh.
Like they loved
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. There was a documentary about him on Netflix. It might still be on there. Yeah.
Like, what do you like? The soulless eyes? Like, what is it?
The rotten teeth.
Yeah. It's disgusting. He's disgusting.
Yeah. And he was a disgusting... He was just disgusting as an individual.
As a person.
But as a criminal, he was horrible.
Yeah. He
Absolutely.
would rape kids, grandmas, anyone. Did not matter to him.
There was one story where he tied up a couple, and he put dishes on the husband.
Oh, yeah. So if he tried to move, the dishes would fall off and he would hear him.
Yeah. What a fucking creep. We might have to cover him, though.
Maybe.
I'll let you do it. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, you don't like the rapey
Yeah, I
stuff.
don't like that shit. So I think this is a good place to stop, actually. I think we're about 45-ish, maybe 50 minutes in. What do you think so far?
I don't know. That red guy is looking mighty suspicious. Only because of the changing of the story.
The changing of the story. He's the last person to see her alive. He was very clearly in LA because he took her there.
Like, what were you doing with her?
Yeah.
And why didn't you take her back home? Like, if I bring someone with me somewhere, I'm making sure they get back home safely.
Well, remember, he drove her from San Diego to LA because she said she was meeting her sister. And she was going to stay at the hotel. So he may have thought that she had a room there. And maybe she did. Yeah, and he just left her. But who actually knows?
We'll find out, maybe.